Hey, what's going on there, guys? Nick here from Absolute MTG, and I'm here with a deck tech for you for Mono Red for Magic the Gathering Online. So this is probably a little bit different than what you guys are used to as far as my deck techs are concerned for the channel. You're probably much more used to me doing paper Magic deck techs and showing you the stuff that I'm playing in real life. However, this is a deck that I've been playing online for a little while now, and actually really like it, and it's pretty cheap and affordable. This is actually what I'm getting into competitive Magic the Gathering online with, and what I'm going to be building from as far as like playing events and winning tickets and just kind of broadening my horizons. So this was my starting point, and it could easily be your starting point as well, just because this deck's actually not that expensive. For the most part, Magic the Gathering online cards are significantly cheaper than their actual paper counterparts. And for the most part, just to go over like some of the cards that we're playing in here, like Goblin Rabblemasters are like $8 to $10. And for the most part, everything's based on tickets, but it's roughly like $1 per ticket as well. So sometimes you can get like tickets if people are selling them for like less, like maybe 80 cents on a ticket or 90 cents on per ticket. However, I just prefer using the Magic store and just buying them for like $1 per ticket. I don't like dealing with a bunch of other people that may or may not be like legitimate, and I don't want people to have information or anything like that. But yeah, for the most part, like, it's one ticket per dollar, so I'm basically just going to be using dollar measurements for everything. So, like, Rabble-Masters are, like, 10 at most, Searing Bloods are, like, 2 or something like that, Roasts are roughly 250, somewhere around there, Outbursts are somewhere around 2, same thing with, like, Stoke the Flames, they're, like, 5 at most. But for the most part, like, the rest of this deck, like, you don't have to pay anything for, like, dual lands, fetch lands, pain lands or anything like that, so your mana base is pretty cheap, and for the most part, like, the rest of your actual deck itself is just commons and uncommons, which is the great thing for like this deck. And in the case of like heroic as well, you don't really have to pay a huge amount of money to actually play a decent deck. Obviously you have some limitations with what you're going to be playing against. Like, of course, if you just run into Siege Rhino decks that are just going to play Siege Rhinos in a sequence, you might have a rough time actually beating them. However, this is just a great starting point for anybody to actually get into Magic the Gathering online for competitive. So to just go over the deck, we have 20 basic lands. We're basically only playing like 1 and 2 CMC cards. We have our Goblin Rabblemaster and our Stoke the Flames that are the only exceptions to that. The Rabblemaster is just great whenever we see our third land, which for us is kind of like flooding for the most part. Our Goblin Rabblemaster is just the best play that we can make once we actually hit 3 mana. Otherwise, we're going to be playing like value creatures like our Akroan Crusader, which is going to play off of the stuff that we actually put on him. So things like Hammerhand, which produce tokens whenever we put on it. It can also give him haste for the turn. And it also manipulates blockers as well, outside of giving +1/+1 and haste to the creature. We have Titan Strength, which allows us to scry and gives our creature +3/+1. So it has some synergy with us using it on Akroan Crusader, as well as like Swiftspear and the Prowess, which is just one of the great things about this. So yeah, Titan Strength buffs up. We have 2 Coordinated Assault. I really like this card just because it manipulates the way that you're actually like attacking through. Like, even if your opponent has like blockers, in the case of playing it up against like Abzan aggro or something like that, like if you have a 1/1 token that you made off of a Akroan Crusader and now you give it first strike, it can block a Death Dealer that your opponent played on their turn 2, and you can actually just get through it and not really have to worry about anything. So sometimes your opponent might get confident and think like, all right, it's just a 1/1, whatever, I'll try to just block it efficiently with my 2/2, and you end up just getting the best of them. So Coordinated Assault's really cool. We have 2 more in the sideboard for like the more creature heavy matchups. We just want to have some ways to get through some of their creatures while also retaining ours. And also triggers off Akroan Crusader pretty well also, so that's a great thing to have in there as well. We have Dragon Mantles, which are cantrips for the deck, so I'm playing 3 of these. These tend to side out alongside the Foundry Street Denizens that we're playing for higher end cards like our Hordeling Outburst and our Outpost Siege that we have here. Alongside the Hordeling Outburst and the Outpost Siege that we have, we're also going to be siding in a mountain, so you never side in the Outpost Sieges without siding in the mountain, and it almost kind of goes the same thing with the Hordeling Outburst. We just want to be playing 21 lands at that point. But the Dragon Mantle is really sweet because it allows us to cantrip off of it. We can get our prowess triggers off the Swiftspear. We can get our triggers off the Akroan Crusader if we're putting it on him and make more tokens. And all of that synergizes fairly well with the Foundry Denizen that we're actually playing. So whenever another red creature enters the battlefield under our control, it gets +1/+0 until the end of the turn. So if we play like our Akroan Crusader on... actually, let's assume that we play like Foundry Denizen on turn 1. We go turn 2 Akroan Crusader into Hammerhand. We're just like getting in so much value because our Akroan Crusader is now going to be a 2/2. It's going to have the enchantment on it, it's going to make a token, and we have 2 triggers off the Foundry Denizen, and we're just bashing in for a huge amount of damage, which is the most efficient way that we want to be playing this type of a deck, just efficiently. So yeah, Dragon Mantle allows for a lot of really cool plays, and it also gives fire breathing as well, which is great. We have 3 Ordeal of Purphoros, which is just another one of those cards where you're like overextending on one of your creatures. In the decks that are playing like a lot of removal, like the control or control-esque type decks, we want to side out like 1 or 2 of these, if not all 3 of them. Like against a purely control deck, we're just siding out all of the additional like +1 cards that are going on our guys, just because they can easily 2-for-1 us. But against like the more fair decks, against decks like Heroic, if we're just trying to outrace them, the Ordeal of Purphoros is just insane, and it just makes our creatures really, really efficient. Just being able to throw it on like the Swiftspear on turn 2, or even like a Crusader on turn 2 is really great, and just being able to sack it once our creature is big enough with counters to deal more damage is great. The Lightning Strike isn't really that impressive, but it's just another burn spell that we're playing in the deck. Dealing the 3 damage is great whenever we're facing up against things like Fleecemane Lion, so that's really the alternative for us over playing like Wild Slash. But the Lightning Strike is definitely really sweet to have just for 2 mana. It's a little bit more efficient of a burn spell than the Wild Slash, even though it's more expensive. But that's exactly what we want to be playing, something that's going to deal 3 damage and get rid of cards occasionally. And then the Stoke the Flames is just great because we get to play the Stoke off of the tokens that we're making off of Akroan Crusader, also potentially Goblin Rabblemaster as well, and anything in between that we have out on the battlefield already. So we might not necessarily hit our 4th land, but we have the Stoke that we can use on like Courser of Krufix or anything like that, we're efficiently playing off of like tokens and creatures that are already on the battlefield. Especially with like Goblin Rabblemaster triggers and tokens entering the battlefield, we can get some efficient Stokes in the main board, but otherwise, once we sideboard and have our Hordeling Outburst out of the board, the Stoke just ends up being a whole lot better. But for the sideboard, we have 1 of for the Mountain, just alongside our Outpost Sieges whenever we're playing a little bit higher on our CMC curve. The 2 Coordinated Assaults for like the more creature-heavy decks, especially like for the mirror match as well. If our opponent's like playing Dragon Fodders and Hordeling Outbursts, we tend to side out like our Foundry Denizens because they're kind of awful. But otherwise, having like our Goblin Rabblemaster not die to the 2 Dragon Fodder tokens is really great. And also making like our Monastery Swiftspear a little bit more threatening is always great as well. We have 2 Roast for just any of the decks that are playing like a bunch of dudes that can block our creatures efficiently. So with Siege Rhinos, Coursers, and whatnot, we want to have the Roasts to be able to deal with those types of cards, and it's just an efficient removal spell for 2 mana at a sorcery speed. We have 3 Searing Blood for the more lower CMC aggro-based decks, so like the other Sligh decks that people are going to be playing, which this deck's actually just extremely popular online because it's so easily accessible for players. So we want to have the Searing Bloods to play up against those players. We have our 4 Hordeling Outbursts, which will side in over cards that normally would require us to put in like a whole lot of work. Like the Foundry Denizens will turn into Hordeling Outbursts, and the Outpost Sieges, we can take out like the Dragon Mantles for those. And then from there, just kind of like make some other cuts, like the Ordeal of Purphoros can turn into a Mountain, and we can sideboard efficiently based on that. So that is basically a rundown on red deck wins as far as Magic the Gathering Online is concerned. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this deck tech. If you would like to see more content like this, let me know, and I can put some stuff together for Magic the Gathering Online. But I'll definitely try to put together some gameplay with this deck to actually show you guys how it works and walk you through the various matchups that you may actually encounter. So thank you guys for watching, but until next time, peace out.